Hey guys, I'm Jeannie Falk Jones. I'm one of the agronomists with K-State Research and Extension. I serve Wallace, Sherman, and Cheyenne counties in Northwest Kansas. And I've been getting some questions after our cold weather events on Monday after Easter, and then a couple other times that week when we had pretty cool temperatures for an extended period of time that caused us some concern on our wheat conditions. And so I've been getting some questions of what does that mean for our wheat and what are we actually looking for if we're going out and looking at our wheat in the field. And so let me just show you here. I tried to come live from the field and just really struggled to get in good close pictures so you could see what I was seeing. And so I just snapped pictures and I'm going to show them to you as we go through here. So here's a picture of a wheat field in the area. This is just kind of a typical look on a lot of this that looks fairly green when you get down in there, but has kind of a bronzed look from the road and across some of these fields. And so here's a closer look at this, and here's some necrotic tissue. So this is the tissue that leaf tissue that would have froze with the cold temperatures, and then they would have turned kind of chlorotic or kind of a yellow color, and then turned brown or necrotic. And so this is dead leaf tissue that we're seeing here, kind of the tips of leaves that have this brownish or bronzing look to it. A lot of this bronzing look is kind of a cosmetic damage, and the fact that we just caught the tips of leaves, and that's what's showing up here. Now, what about, have we caused damage further down into the plant? And so that's what we're going to talk about just a little bit more here. So when I walk into a wheat field and I'm looking for spring freeze injury, a couple of things that I check, and I really look at that newest leaf to see what kind of condition it is in, and I look at the developing wheat head to see what kind of condition that is in. And so obviously one of these is quite a bit easier to check than the other. And so I look at the newest leaf, the easier one to check, because I want to see if it's nice and green or if it is turning brown. And the reason I look at this is because if you follow this leaf all the way down into that, what was the developing stem, the bottom of this leaf connects to the growing point. The growing point is also what's right below this developing wheat head. So here is our growing point right in here. So our leaves are attached to this. So this leaf here is attached to that growing point, as is the developing wheat head. So this really gives us an indication if those cold temperatures have damaged this growing point. And so I have the newest leaf that I look at, and then I look at the developing wheat head. So you can get to the wheat head a couple of different ways. You can either peel back each of these leaves individually to get down to that wheat head, or you can take a knife with you, and I would show you, this is the X-Acto knife that I've been taking to the field with me. I like an X-Acto knife or a box knife because it has a very thin blade and it's easy to get through that wheat stem. So that's what I've been using to slice a stem and really get into the inside to look to see what that developing wheat head looks like and what the growing point looks like. So things that I check: newest leaf, developing wheat stem, wheat head. I might also check the wheat stem below the growing point to make sure that that doesn't feel soft, like there's been some other damage. You can also just kind of slide your fingers up the stem and you'll be able to feel that growing point, that little notch feeling in the stem, and then you'll know when you cut through it with your knife. And so those are the things I really check for when I am pulling out a wheat tiller and looking closely at it. So if we go to our next slide here, when I'm looking at the newest leaves, what I'm looking for here is what kind of condition this is in. So as you look at this one right here, that has kind of a brownish cast to it. This one has kind of a yellowish cast. This one actually feels just a little bit crispy. And so the newest leaves on these are kind of an indication of what's going on with the growing point. If I found any of these newest leaves looking like that, that would cause me to do some further investigation. I would go ahead and slice those stems to get down to the growing point, to that developing wheat head, to see what kind of condition that it is in. These tillers here are in a little worse condition. If I'm looking at these newest leaves, they look pretty necrotic, not in very good shape, kind of crispy looking. And so crispy as in we can crunch them in our hands and hear them crunch. And then if I look at the rest of these leaves, the rest of these leaves don't look like they're in very good shape. Everything has kind of a tannish cast to it. And so I don't have a lot of hope for what the developing wheat head is going to look like inside of this, because we've got some indication that we're having that whole tiller die off in some cases. So I've seen this in a few fields. So pay attention to what you're seeing. If you're seeing these newest leaves not in good shape, but then the whole rest of the tiller not in good shape, take note of that, because that could be an indication of a tiller that is completely dying off here. One thing when I'm looking at this newest leaf and the newest leaf to see what it looks like, if it is followed up by green growth, that is a good sign. That tells me that there is still growth happening, and that growing point is moving up and forming the stem. And so this is a good indication of what you're seeing out in the field. I might go ahead and still slice that stem just to see what the growing point is looking like, but I'm really excited to see new growth showing up on this. Okay, one other question I've gotten about on leaves is this crinkling look on some of these leaves. This is just a response to cold temperatures. And so this is not an indication of other things that are going on. It's just really a response of cold temperatures. And you can see that we have all this green growth showing up below those crinkled areas, and then the necrotic area on the end of that. So just an indication of cold temperatures. What we might see in some of this is as we have newer leaves showing up, we might have a little trouble of them getting through all of this. And so we might see leaves coming kind of out the side of this area, which is just fine. Those leaves might be a little bit trapped, but they will try to break out the side of this area and go forward. So keep that in mind if you're seeing those crinkle areas also. Okay, so here is another picture of a wheat field. And so what I'm seeing on this is an east-west planted field. So on this side here, we have north, and here's south. So if you look close on this, here we have more necrotic areas of those leaves on the north side than we do on the south side. We can kind of see this showing up over here, over here also. So here's a more necrotic area, less necrotic on that side. This is an indication of which direction the wind was blowing. It was blowing from the north. This field does not have a lot of protection to the north side of it. Kind of feels like there's not much between this field and the North Pole. So this is also showing that there seems to be more damage where there was colder, where the wind was blowing. I would sure split stems on both sides of this row on tillers from both sides to really get an indication if we're seeing some differences across that. Here is a healthy wheat head. And so what I'm looking for here is the developing wheat head. I sliced the stem. So here is our wheat head. Here is our growing point right here below the wheat head. Here would be the first joint that was dropped right here. And then this white area right in the center here is basically a hollow stem that's being formed, like what we're seeing right down here. So just an idea of what you're seeing when you slice into that stem. What I'm looking for in this wheat head is I want to see it look very turgid. And what that means is that it has water inside of it. I don't want to see something that looks shriveled. Also, if you look, you can see kind of a green stem kind of going up through the center of this. This looks pretty healthy, kind of a light green color. We don't want to see something that looks brown or mushy in this area. So this stem looks pretty, or this head, excuse me, looks pretty healthy on this plant here. So here is a damaged wheat head, and this one is a little harder to see. I would tell you that as I'm splitting stems, I think the ones that have been damaged seem to be almost gummy inside, or kind of sticky. They seem to stick more to the blade as I'm cutting through, and it's a little harder to pull some of those leaves apart to really know what kind of condition that they're in. And so what I'm looking for on this all is kind of a tannish brown color or a dark cream color. That to me tells me that there might be a concern. If you follow this area right here, this is this newest leaf wrapped around here on the sides, and this, you can see it kind of going up into the stem that looks kind of a brownish color. Sometimes you'll be able to see that also. I think it's much harder to get the leaves unwrapped from around the head because they just seem to be that much more sticky and harder to get into. But this is a damaged wheat head. You can see kind of that browner look down at the base of it also. One other thing you might take to the field with you is a magnifying glass. That will help, because we're talking about very small wheat heads at this stage of the game, especially for our wheat in far northwest Kansas. As you go further south and east, bigger heads, easier to see some of the results of these cold temperatures. Up here, it's a little bit harder just because our wheat heads are so small still at this stage of the game. So take a magnifying glass with you. We're really looking for that off color, brownish look, kind of shriveled up, kind of mushy look to this. Here is both of those side by side. So a nice healthy wheat head, very turgid, has lots of water in it, very looks like it's ready to continue to grow. And this one on this side, which looks kind of mushy and kind of brown. Okay, here's a little bit closer look, the undamaged one and the damaged one. You'll see a little bit different look color as you go deeper into this. Just not as healthy and not as in good a shape. Just really does look kind of shriveled and just doesn't have a wheat head look to it. This, you really do need a magnifying glass to get in close to see this. Okay, so that kind of concludes some of the pictures that I have for you. There are great pictures in this spring freeze injury publication from K-State. You can Google K-State spring freeze injury. This will bring it up, this publication up out of the bookstore. It's a PDF. You can flip through it, and it has pictures of what I'm showing you. And if you're looking at wheat that it's in a little different growth stage, has a little bit more expanded sets of photos for you to look at. I would also tell you that while we're at roughly 10 days out from that event, we always talk about 10 to 14 days to really know the complete effects of what is going on with these cold temperatures. We're probably going to need 14 days on some of this, mostly because our first 4 days were pretty cool and chilly. And so not a lot of wheat growth happening right then. And so as we get warm and we have warmer temperatures, that's really when we see the effects, because that wheat plant is going to either start to get growing again, or we're going to see the effects of the damage on some of those plants. So know that we still have some time that may give us a clearer answer on some of these plants that we're a little unsure about. If you have any questions, you can just get a hold of me. My name is Jeannie Falk Jones. I'm at the extension offices in Goodland, St. Francis, and Sharon Springs, or I can be caught on the experiment station in Colby. Now with COVID-19, it's a little harder to get a handle on, to get a hold of me. At the same time, call those extension offices, call the experiment station. They will get you in touch with me. You can also email me directly. I have pictures up on our Facebook page. You can also go to our website, which has a link to that spring freeze injury publication.